If someone gave you $500,000, do you think you could learn one of the hardest languages in the world in a few months? Well, I happen to know a guy who took that offer, and in just a few months, he showed off his insane language skills in front of millions of people.
何か情報が必要な時はぜひ。
This is Ansel Elgort. It's a name every time I see it, I feel like I should be pronouncing it in a different way. He's an American star of the popular TV series Tokyo Vice, and yes, he does get $500,000 for every episode he films. He went from knowing absolutely zero Japanese to impressively fluent in a very short amount of time. So what's his secret? Well, I'll give you a hint. It involves hard work, basketball, and a nasty virus that shut down half the world. The whole world. But let's skip the gossip and go straight to the source.
First, I started learning the lines phonetically, and then realized it wasn't quite enough, so really started taking language classes.
Learning lines phonetically is a common trick for many actors. Do you think you could do better than this?
아가씨도 곧 좋은 소식이 있을 거예요. 제가 천천한 친구 역할인데요. 나를 굉장히 싫어해요.
And let's be honest, for a language fan, it's painfully obvious when someone's just parroting memorized syllables. They don't have any of the natural stress or intonation that makes a language authentic.
我们在玩一个好玩的心念游戏，你只能说国语。
Actors do this more than you realize, especially if you don't know the language that they're speaking. And some of them just mumble gibberish or give up entirely. True story.
I'm out. I've been wanting someone to pass me those dumplings for half an hour, but I don't know how to say, give me them dumps in Mandarin.
But if an actor needs to learn a language like Japanese, I can see why it would be tempting just to fake it. I mean, check out this chart. According to the FSI language rank, Japanese comes in at level 5. This means Japanese is one of the most difficult languages in the world for English speakers to learn. So what made Ansel want to learn Japanese?
I didn't even think I was going to be learning Japanese, but then you want to be pushed and you want to do something out of the box. Jake and I, we have a few things in common. One of them probably would be that he really loves challenges, and that was me with this project.
I think this attitude of being up for a challenge is a common thing among language learners. We enjoy the thrill of starting something that seems impossible at first, right? And when we start to see progress, well, that just begets progress. It's a feeling like no other. But with difficult languages like Japanese, there is an added challenge. Progress can take quite a bit of time to show up, and it can get discouraging, and it really requires a high level of dedication to power through those tough moments. It makes me wonder where he got his inspiration to keep going.
The thing is, like, working with Michael Mann was great because he's very inspiring, because he's so committed to his work. You know, everywhere he goes, he has a stack of papers in his hand and a tape recorder, and he's transcribing everything and taking down notes, and so kind of like in a fervor obsessed with his work. I was inspired by that work ethic.
Michael Mann sounds like a pretty intense boss. Now, I'm curious, how many hours a day did he expect Ansel to study?
So initially, he recommended that I study Japanese 9 hours a day.
Did I hear that right? 9 hours a day? My brain hurts just thinking about that.
That 9 hours a day of Japanese turned into 4 hours a day, which was still pretty good. And then when I wasn't in class, I was around a lot of Japanese people and trying to speak as much as I could.
Okay, yeah, I can breathe easier now. Smart move to drop it down to 4 hours. That's still pretty intense, but it is doable. And I really think the reason that Ansel could stick with such a rigorous schedule is because he found his why. For Ansel and his character, it was very clear. He was up for the challenge and he didn't back down. He wanted to learn not just his lines, he wanted to learn about the language, the culture, the people. Now, I have to take a moment here to point out that Ansel is not the only actor with this level of passion for languages. Here's another example. You recognize this guy? He's also not one to back down from a language challenge.
As soon as we started learning languages, I found I had an affinity for it. I understood it. Started learning French, or taking Latin or Spanish.
Tom Hiddleston, better known as Loki, can speak at least 4 and possibly up to 9 languages.
I am Loki.
Respect Loki, although I guess time traveling. You've got time to learn the languages, haven't you? Next time I'm in the Marvel universe, I'd love to have a conversation with you. You pick the place, I will pick the language.
This is a tremendous idea.
In the meantime, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and if you aren't subscribed already, well, there's no excuse. Hit that button right now. There's more action-packed content headed your way.
I spent a lot of months preparing. We started doing intense classes 4 hours a day. I had to know the whole hiragana alphabet. I had to be able to write the whole thing. So I was studying a lot. It was super fun.
I love that he called this fun. All that hard work in the beginning, you know, it can be frustrating if you're not really down for it, but if you can power through, those victory moments are sure to come, those times when you sit back and say to yourself, oh, I'm having an actual conversation in another language, and I understand it.
実際に日本に住んで 撮影ができたことは
Here's something else I find interesting. Learning lines for a TV show is actually a really good way to learn fast. Chunking, which is learning phrases rather than individual words, it helps us sound more natural because we're not just like word by word like a robot, and it makes it so much easier to remember vocabulary. It's interesting, like learning a complete phrase makes it easier to learn single words. It's one of those kind of ironic things about language learning, and I've used this method a lot, especially in languages that were very unfamiliar to me at the beginning, like Egyptian Arabic or Cantonese. But you've got to be careful. If you only learn a phrase or two and then take them out into the real world, you will quite soon find yourself in a bit of a pickle.
I would learn lines like, tobacco suite mo ii desu ka? Can I smoke? You know, that I remember going to a bar and saying so smoothly, tobacco suite mo ii desu ka? You know what I mean? Thinking I was so cool because I had my lines memorized and they thought I was better than I was. And then they would speak to me in regular Japanese and I couldn't really speak, you know.
Oof, bit of an ego check for sure. He did mention earlier that he didn't mind making mistakes. I'm sure this just made him more determined to become fluent. At this point, it seemed like nothing could stop him, but then something terrible happened. Ready for a wrench in the works? Well, filming for season 1 of Tokyo Vice started in March of 2020. You may recall, there was a little incident with March of 2020. This was the time just about everything in the world shut down. Can't quite remember why, maybe you can. As you could probably imagine though, filming was halted for several months, and this could have meant an end to Ansel's Japanese, but true to character, he took this as an opportunity to double down on his studying. Pretty admirable choice.
The shutdown was great for me because then I got to, you know, I wasn't too good at Japanese at first. I mean, I still, you know, was good enough, but it was like, you know, we got shut down and then we had a whole nother prep period, like 2 or 3 months again, where I started taking Japanese class for the pilot again.
I absolutely love this part of Ansel's language journey. He took what otherwise could have been a bad situation and turned it into a really fantastic study session. How about you? What happened to your language learning during COVID? Let me know in the comments. Even after he had to leave Japan, Ansel found ways to keep challenging himself until filming resumed. Dedication for you.
I was able to, from America, then continue to do Zoom classes with Homo Sensei, my language teacher, and just like prepare as much as possible for this character, which was great. And now with season 2, it's like I'm going to be even more comfortable.
Having time stand still for you so you can get better at a language is a pretty magical opportunity for language-minded people out there. Especially for an actor, their schedules can be total chaos, as you can imagine. Here's a taste of the schedule that Jennifer Garner kept while she was filming the TV series Alias. If you've seen the show, you'll know that she filmed a ton of episodes where she spoke in other languages.
It was so hard. Every single lunch break I had somebody waiting for me to teach me a fight, to teach me a language. And the days like started at 5 and they ended at 11.
Wow. And I thought my life was chaotic. No wonder she stuck to phonetic lines and never learned any of her languages to fluency. It's understandable.
German I did a bunch, or Russian I did a lot of Russian. You have to know something so much better than you think you do, because in the moment you get nervous.
Sounds to me like she knows more about language learning than she's letting on. Jennifer, if you ever decide to start learning a language, hit me up.
Merci.
I've got some fantastic courses available, and here at StoryLearning we teach languages through the power of stories. Stories, as actors will know, are the way that we learned our first language as well. It's the way we connect with the world, how we make sense of our surroundings, just like Alias and Tokyo Vice, which really are just action-packed stories, right?
Everything you do has consequences. There's always a cost.
And if you're curious about my story learning method, I've got you covered. Click the link in the description below. You will get a free copy of my story learning kit. It's full of my best language learning methods, a video masterclass, a printable planner, a bunch of stuff to help you learn languages through stories. It's free. You won't want to miss it. Now, where were we? So did you know that Ansel has some language competition on screen? Rachel Keller, who plays Samantha Porter, gets to flex her Japanese speaking and singing muscles in the show. She has a bit of a different background story, but she also took the challenge to learn Japanese.
Japan has always been a part of my life. My mom grew up here and my grandmother speaks Japanese, but I just had never learned myself, so I was really excited to start learning Japanese.
I think we just found her why, didn't we? Connection to family can be a big motivator to learn a new language. You're naturally drawn to languages that resonate with us in some way, and that often means a connection to family or close friends. I remember when I went to Japan, lived there for 4 years, and even before I went, I had friends from university, from previously, who it was just very motivating for me to be able to connect with them in a lot more motivated than just asking someone to heat up a bento box in a convenience store. So that was a strong motivator for me. What about you? Are you studying a language because of connection to family or friends? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know in the comments. Now, even though she was motivated, Rachel still struggled to learn Japanese, especially the grammar. She said, "The Japanese language is so difficult, partly because the sentence structure has no relation to English. I shed some tears learning Japanese." And I can definitely relate. Japanese is a tricky language. I've been speaking it for many, many years. And one of the most interesting things about Japanese is that you can study things like grammar and sentence structure and things like that, and it just never makes any sense at all until one day it clicks and it just feels like the most obvious thing ever. But you never know when that clicking day is actually going to come. I was surprised to find out that Rachel is not worried about sounding like a foreigner when she speaks Japanese.
はい、わかってます。
She embraces the fact that she and her character are very much American, which is nice to see that confidence. She doesn't mind her faults and just keeps going.
While Samantha is speaking Japanese and is fluent in Japanese, she isn't Japanese. So it's charming, I think, that it's not exactly the way it's supposed to sound.
I find this attitude so refreshing. Mistakes are not something to be afraid of. They just, at the end of the day, mistakes, they reveal your true personality, and that's something to be proud of. Here's the truth. Mistakes are going to happen. They're going to happen a lot, and that's okay. If you try to avoid mistakes altogether, then you never actually get any practice in the language, which is what's going to prevent you from becoming good in the first place. So make mistakes and embrace them. It even happens to people like this.
Elle a un cœur. Ouais, j'ai dit corps toujours. Cœur ou corps? Cœur. Elle a les deux, hein. Elle a les deux, mais...
Bradley Cooper has spent a lot of time studying French. He even lived in Paris for a while, but he still makes mistakes and he doesn't care.
J'ai pas inquiété à faire de défauts, hein. Tu sais, je peux communiquer, hein. Je sais que mon grammaire c'est débile, mais je veux communiquer et c'est pourquoi je fais de la répétition toujours. Je parle français avec quelqu'un qui va me parler ensemble tout le temps.
I think his French is magnifique. He does need to brush up on his vocabulary a little bit though. This is why immersion is so important, surrounding yourself with stories and sounds from the language. The more you put yourself into situations where the language surrounds you, the more natural and confident you will sound. Did you know that Ansel was so determined to immerse himself in Japanese culture that he even took Aikido lessons? Now that's dedication. Want to know what his study schedule was like? It might surprise you.
I was honestly surrounded by an incredible group of people, and I was very inspired to do the best work that I could possibly do. And I loved Japan. I loved the culture. I loved learning a language. I loved learning new things. I loved spending time with my Japanese co-stars and making friends in Yoyogi Koen, Yoyogi Park, playing basketball with kids who spoke no English, just immersing myself in Japan.
Inspiration, a love for the country and the culture, great friends, opportunities to practice the language. He's really got a good language scenario going on. Check out this press conference where Ansel flexed his newly honed language skills.
おはようございます。よろしくお願いします。Ansel Elgortです。最高の先生もいますから、ホーマ先生という先生です。一緒に毎日4時間で勉強してます。時々6時間か。後で日本に住んでから毎日日本人と話しました。だから役のためにとってもいい練習だった。
Now I have to say I'm impressed. Not only was he able to speak Japanese on the spot, he also kept calm under a ton of pressure. And when people spring languages on you, it's not fun. He did really well. I wonder what advice he would give us.
I always just think about just listening is important.
I could not agree more. Listening is how we really get the sounds and inflections into our brains. When I took a challenge to learn Italian in 3 months, many years ago, I spent the first month just listening and reading, a whole month. Didn't speak a word. You can check out the full story here. But I can honestly say that my Italian would not have been anywhere near as good if I hadn't spent that time listening, because it just primed my brain for everything that was to come. But for me, the most impressive part of this whole story is that Ansel is not done learning Japanese. He's determined to keep going and improve along the way.
Skoshizutsu, little by little, I've been, getting better at Japanese.
So what is next for Ansel Elgort? Well, I cannot wait to find out. In the meantime, if you need some more inspiration, check out this video here where I take a closer look at the US military and their very unique and interesting methods for teaching languages fast.